50-year plan.
I will call to order a meeting of Wilsonville City Council for our work session at 5:44 p.m. on September 19th. And we'll start with asking councilors if they have any comments on review of agenda and items on consent. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Any councilor concerns? I did want to make one point that today we have a lot, it looks to me like we might have a long meeting, and last time, you know, we've been lucky to have some shorter meetings lately, and I realize I've kind of let councilor concerns and comments and so forth go long. So today I'm going to ask everybody to stay within 3 to 5 minutes and confine your comments to, you know, matters at hand and the commissions and city boards and commissions and outside groups that you work on behalf of the city. And maybe we'll find that it moves right along, but might be pretty long. So thank you. We will start with our pre-council work session speaking about the Aurora Airport Comprehensive Plan policies, led by Ms. Bateshell.
Hopefully that is working. I'm short, so my face is not, there we go. All right, thank you, Mayor Fitzgerald, councilors. It's really great to be in front of you. I think this is my first time actually getting to present back in person with you all, and it's wonderful. So thank you. We are here to talk tonight about the airport good neighbor policies that we have drafted. I do just want to step back and kind of provide you with a reminder of the purpose of the project and your task before you tonight, or the questions that we have, and then I'll hand over the presentation. So just to remind you, the purpose of the project is really that we have, as a city, we have an interest in the airport resource, we have an interest in the farmland of the French Prairie, and potential growth at and adjacent in those areas. We want to be able to have a voice at the table as an affected jurisdiction when there is planning efforts going on in those areas and at the airport. And so as a part of this, we need to adopt policies in order to give us direction when we're participating in those processes. Otherwise, we don't kind of have that set in stone. So what's in front of you tonight in this draft is we've tried to take the information that we've heard throughout the process of the project, through the discussions we've had, to really hone in on what is relevant at the comprehensive plan level. So we heard a lot during this process, a lot that probably encompasses more than what we would adopt into a comprehensive plan. And so we've really tried to capture the relevant interests and concerns, but in a manner that is consistent with the scope of us and our role as a city who doesn't have jurisdiction over the airport, and that of the comprehensive plan. So what we'd like to hear from you tonight is, in reviewing that draft, have we missed anything? Does this capture the city's scope of influence? And are there any changes you'd like to have or discussion you want to have in preparation for this to come to a public hearing? It is currently scheduled for a public hearing in front of the Planning Commission in November and in front of you in December. So with that, I will introduce Chris Green. He is senior planner with HHPR. They've been helping us with this project. He's going to remind us where we've been in this project, what we've heard so far, and then review the draft policies that are in front of you.
Thank you. So I heard there's a lot on the agenda tonight, so I will give a brief overview and leave some time for questions and discussion. So I'll talk about those interests and concerns about the airport that were identified in our engagement with stakeholders in the community in general. Draft policy objectives that you have in your packet, the proposed boundary for an area of special concern that would be added to the comprehensive plan, and then time for discussion. Just kind of a very quick overview. So we've engaged with the community in the process over the last several months in a variety of ways. We had an online survey earlier this year that had pretty good responses for kind of a specific topic like this. Interviewed stakeholders in the communities in Wilsonville that may be impacted by the airport, people that are pilots or businesses based at the airport, businesses based in Wilsonville, just a kind of a variety of folks with a deeper kind of background, I guess, on the airport and kind of that intersection. And then we had online open houses and got some feedback that way as well. Those interests and concerns that were identified through the process, so they're described in the draft text for the area of special concern, so talks about kind of why this would be an area of special concern for Wilsonville, and specifically these interests and concerns that are sort of highlighted here. I will go through them really quickly as just a high level. Noise and air pollution from flight patterns over Wilsonville is one we heard pretty frequently, especially in the survey. Water pollution in and around the Willamette River, so there's potentially issues with municipal services in the area of the airport, like water, sewer, stormwater, and some concern that if those aren't effective, that the Willamette River watershed could be impacted, which is a resource in terms of recreation, environmental resource, and then water source as well for the city. We did hear a lot about loss of high-quality farmland, so the area of the French Prairie around the Aurora State Airport, and concerns about kind of if the footprint expands, the impact of that, because there's rural reserves designated by Metro, and then exclusive farm use zones by Marion County that are sort of in that area. We heard some economic development discussion, concern about impacts on industrial and employment land. So the airport supports some businesses in Wilsonville that are able to use the airport for travel and things like that. There was concern that Wilsonville has put a lot of planning and investment and cooperation with other jurisdictions and Metro in facilitating employment land being developed in certain areas in the city that has especially good access to transportation and things like that. And there was a concern that that could be there could be kind of a draw away from that if there was a area nearby where there isn't the same infrastructure requirements or land use requirements that go into it. Maintaining effective surface transportation connections, so travel on roads to and from the airport and Wilsonville, and then through the French Prairie, just kind of the area around. And then resiliency and capacity for emergency response, so that's something that was mentioned in addition to the kind of company use. That was one of the benefits that was discussed by a lot of survey respondents especially, and so wanting to make sure that that's preserved in the event that the airport changed through a master planning process, making sure that that's identified as something that Wilsonville really cares about as part of the airport. So the draft objectives that go with the area of special concern, these sort of try to address some of those and are meant to, as Miranda said, talk very specifically about the city's role and what that might be in some of those issues. So I've sort of paraphrased them here, but the draft language in your packet is probably the most direct example of the draft. But the first one focuses on airport master planning and just making sure that the city is engaged with that as an affected jurisdiction. The second one talks more about changes to aviation activities at the airport, if there were changes to the way the airport operates, making sure that the city is engaged in that conversation. The third one one is about noise impacts. So those are primarily regulated by federal and state agencies, and so engaging with those agencies. There's also nonprofit organizations that work directly at the airport to help kind of mitigate some of those issues, and so making sure that the city engages with them. The fourth one is looking at public and private development and infrastructure projects, so potentially at the airport or around the airport, and what the impacts might be if there is proposed, development in or near the airport. The fifth one talks about infrastructure, and that that one kind of tries to balance making sure that if there is concern about the facilities that are there now, that's addressed, but that also it's infrastructure going in that's appropriate to more of a rural development pattern and not necessarily like an urban level of infrastructure that ends up getting built in a rural area. And then the last one is talking about general aviation and those existing services at the airport. That was cited as one of the benefits of the airport, both in terms of service to some businesses and aviators, and there's benefits of having public safety facilities located that close by. So making sure that in the master planning process for the airport and in general the city make sure that those are maintained at that location. So there's the proposal is, and in terms of where this would go in the comprehensive plan, the city has areas of special concern. Right now there's A through N, which are shown on this map, but this would be area O is the next one in the alphabet. And just kind of looking at these, a lot of them are within the city of Wilsonville. Some of them have special design concerns like Old Town, where there's historic buildings, but a lot of them are located either outside of the city or in areas that were outside of the city at the time they were designated, and were areas for the city to kind of look at what the interaction between these areas and the city would be. And then this proposed boundary for area O. So this map shows the airport boundary itself in blue. That's kind of the state airport site. The orange is properties that have through the fence access currently. And then that black area is the outline of the area of special concern. Generally, that's about one parcel out from that through the fence or airport boundary to capture some of what's happening directly adjacent to the airport or really close by. And then you can see the exclusive farm use and rural reserves that each county has designated in and around that area on this map as well. And I do have some closer in versions of that if folks want to look at it, but I wanted to jump to the discussion questions. So as we're looking at potentially bringing a draft forward, are there any key policy objectives or special considerations missing? And then do these reflect the city's scope of influence, as Miranda was saying, the city's role in kind of a larger regional discussion, and how well do these align? I'd like to hear your questions or feedback.
Thank you for that presentation. I was looking at, I think you've covered a lot of the areas. In some cases, I'm thinking it's a little bland, and it's presenting things in the most dispassionate way I could imagine. And that is, I'll give you an example on page, and this is really, you want to be factual, but for example, when you leave out some details, it kind of detracts from being factual. And so on the first bullet on page 10 of our packet, it talks about the high-quality farmland. And then in a couple of places, you also talk about the effect of the economy. The effect, there are a lot of economic considerations here. And I think in Wilsonville, we've just had a history of being very aware of maintaining high-quality jobs and supporting a strong business community. One of the most important elements of our economy here is our agricultural sector. And the French Prairie area is one of the most valuable traded sector segments of our economy. I don't have the statistics here, but I know you can get them from Oregon State University Extension Service. And when you talk about traded sector, we often think about, oh, it's this chip manufacturer, it's a technology company. But our agricultural products that are grown right there in that area of Oregon are traded all over the world. And unlike other business sectors, that agricultural area or production area is not going to relocate to Utah or some other state that gives it tax incentive. It's only going to go away if we scrape that soil off and we don't have it anymore. And so in that second bullet, I would really like to see something a little more than where it says it includes high-value soils. So I think there should be something that just talks about the distinctive nature of that part of Oregon. And right here within the city limits, we have a number of businesses that operate because that traded sector agriculture is right there, producing packaged foods and fresh foods that are sold, in Oregon and also abroad. So that's one comment I wanted to make, and I just hope that when we talk about the reason we have we have stated, I think it's important to state the the industrial zones within the city limits, and I think you have it described in here fairly well, but I want to hear from maybe some of the other counselors about this, that not only do we think opening up and developing a lot of businesses out in the unincorporated areas might draw away from this. To me, it's more like it's a bad use of public resources to take away from that, because not only have we invested in it through various resources, our surrounding cities have also invested in it through roads and transportation to make that work. Any other comments?
I thought that was good. I hear.
Councilor Linville.
I don't know whether I'm on or am I on?
You're on.
Okay, I'm on. Good. So thank you for your presentation, and for I want to particularly commend you for objective number 6, in addition to the others, but that we need to recognize and advocate to maintain the general aviation designation and existing services at the airport. I agree with that, and I publicly want to say that I support that. I do have a question, and I also support the mayor's concern about the exclusive farm use lands and the importance of those. But I have a question about the boundary designation of the area of special concern O. It's an odd shape. I'm sure there's a rationale for that. But it does include property that is beyond the confines of the state regional airport, as well as the what I call the FBO, the through the fence field-based operations, and specifically wondered why the northbound boundary, well, why it's the shape it is, but why the north boundary ends at Arndt Road, when we specifically in the attachment 1, second paragraph, talk about the impact and the importance of the impact to Wilsonville of the aircraft taking off and landing over Wilsonville, the noise and air pollution and environmental issues, including the potential negative impact on the city of Wilsonville, and I think as well as our transportation system. But then in the potential impacts, the first two specifically say noise and air pollution from flight patterns over Wilsonville and water pollution to the river, which obviously is beyond the Arndt Road. Both of those two things are beyond the Arndt Road northern boundary. So why would we not extend that as part of the area of concern for O, because it in fact does extend north, even to Wilsonville. So if you could just give me a little insight into that, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Councilor Linville. I'll go ahead and start, and then Chris, anything that I miss, please feel free to add to it. We actually had a lot of conversation about this. If you'll remember the last time we were here, we had, I think, a few different options for maps, or we had a long conversation about where to draw that boundary. So the project team went back and really looked at the comprehensive plan, looked at that section of areas of special concern and the definition for that and what the purpose and preface for that whole section is, and then spent some time talking about it. And so what that section lists is that the areas that are called out in the areas of special concern are those that need specific language describing special considerations that must be addressed in development of these areas. And that the special considerations are to guide the city when planning for or reviewing development in these areas. And so that is really what rooted us in thinking about where we draw the boundary, and that it's not necessarily the impact, because in some instances the impact could be just to that area or just adjacent to it, and in other ways the impact could be much broader and potentially impact the whole city. And when we went back and looked at other areas, we saw a similar pattern where, you know, if you don't pay attention to the traffic or transportation considerations, that could impact the whole city. But really we're talking about what happens in that area when we review development. So that's what guided our selection of this boundary, was thinking about what is the type of development or the potential proposals that we might be reviewing, where that would be located, related to airport activity or airport growth that we would want to review, and then use the guidance in this comprehensive plan to help guide our participation in the review of that. So that's what guided us in terms of where we drew the boundary. There could be discussion among the council on whether we correctly drew that in the exact right place, because there is, you know, no magic to this, and that maybe it should be extended to some degree. But we really kind of went that one parcel over or approximate to that from the through the fence activity to encompass the area that might be around the airport, and if the airport boundary or the through the fence boundary changes at some point in time, that our boundary is encompassing what that area we might have interest in is.
So I think I turned myself off. So on the westernmost side of that boundary, it follows the road there. But I know that I'm wondering why it doesn't extend farther on that side as it does on the east side, you know, and why the shape ended up being. And there's another portion on the mid southwest corner where it kind of jogs in, and what was the rationale for leaving those two areas out of our area of concern. And I know one of the parcels of property on that west side is for sale right now, so.
So in terms of kind of those east and west directions and why they're not symmetrical, we basically just tried to use one parcel out in either direction as the guideline. There's a few parcels up towards the northwest corner that it's a little more like smaller properties up there, and so we extended it out to the road. But in general, that's the depth of the parcels on either side, so it's just a little bit different. The one, let's see, there was a few, like City of Aurora that was cut out. I believe there's a portion of, I can't remember at the moment, but that notch just to the north of Aurora, but basically it was, if it was in the City of Aurora, Aurora's kind of planning for that area.
Sure. So this is pretty much unincorporated.
Yeah, so we tried to kind of get, for the most part, the state airport boundary itself, through the fence properties, and then tried to go like one parcel further. Mm-hmm. But it does result in kind of a jagged shape.
Okay.
Councilor West.
My questions are along the same lines as actually Councilor Linville. I'm trying to better grasp this area of concern or special interest. And just being not an expert in this, you guys might be able to help me out. So you showed a map, it's not in the packet, but you showed a map of like other special interest areas within the city of Wilsonville. Mm-hmm. And it just seemed like a glaring thing that Charbonneau wasn't highlighted as a special interest. And then it goes a little bit along with what Councilor Linville says, where, why does it start at Arndt Road right there? There's that field, that farm, and then you cross the street and there's Columbia helicopters and you have the airport. And so I'm trying, I heard a little bit about your explanation there, but I don't understand if the community impacted the most within that region that's residential and has probably one of the biggest issues is Charbonneau. Why I don't see them referenced a bunch here at all either. So I was just can you maybe help me understand that a little bit better?
Sure. Part of what we're trying to do here is not necessarily highlight the area that might be impacted or the area that might be impacted the most, as much as where do we need to participate in reviewing development. So that's the key aspect of why Charbonneau or any residential area in our neighborhood is not represented in the Area O boundary.
Okay.
When we went through the process of this project, I think early on, we often called out Charbonneau because it is the closest residential area to the airport in the city of Wilsonville. And a lot of what we heard is that that a lot of Wilsonville neighborhoods, a lot of areas within Wilsonville are impacted, and not just Charbonneau. And so we really want to try to capture that in the language that's in this section of the plan.
I would agree with that. Maybe it feels this way that disproportionately, though the whole city is impacted, right? We're only so big, but disproportionately Charbonneau's impact is greater than like Villebois, like another big neighborhood in the community. So I know we're not ignoring Charbonneau, but I just wanted to make sure, I just want to understand that part of the conversation.
I just have one more question that has to do with the boundary.
Or Councilor Lehan has a question.
First, do you want to go first? So at one point, I think the request to the FAA by the airport was to extend the runway north of where it currently is. And so would drawing the boundary at Arndt Road preclude us, because it would be beyond, if they actually wanted to extend that north from where it currently is, it would not be included in our Area O. the FAA said no to that proposal, but it seems like if it came up again, that it would not be included in our area of concern.
I think it probably would be good to look at those parcels north of Arndt Road. I think probably, Clackamas County went through the rural reserve process in designating those, so it was a little bit different, but in terms of the idea of this, of kind of looking at those areas and where a proposal might take place, that's something we could look at is those parcels on the other side of Arndt Road and what the shape might look like with those included.
Thank you. Councillor Lehan.
Yes. Hard to tell. Is it on? Similar, I understand the difference between the impact zone and the area of concern. The impact, I think we're all familiar with the old, what was it, 10,000 foot thing or yard thing, whatever it was, the big oval around the airport that went up, and then they cut out Clackamas County and Wilsonville in the oval. So we're familiar with that as the original impact zone that then got chopped up. So this is, but I understand what you're saying. This is the area of concern where we're thinking problems will arise or potentially could arise. But I think that we do have some history. I don't know if it's appropriate in this case, but we have some history with development proposals north of Arndt Road that have continued over many years with legislative proposals. In other words, not through Clackamas County land use, but through legislative proposals that were clearly connected to the airport. So I can see the interest in perhaps having it go north of Arndt Road, even though it doesn't need to go to Charbonneau any more than, because some of the problems that you listed previously were things like watershed of the Willamette River, and so we've said that's our concern, but we don't need to draw the Willamette River in there, right? Because we've already stated that, and we've already stated that about the noise for our citizens and et cetera. So thank you for your explanation.
Thank you, and we have one more comment from Council President Ackerville.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. I understand this is maybe in some ways a difficult assignment, but I appreciate a lot of what is in this draft. When I was reading through the objectives, I think that those did a good job of representing what I have been hearing and points that have come up for us. I understand Objective 6 and read it to really try to get at making sure that those existing services, including the emergency safety services, that those are able to be maintained. When I was reading the bullets that preceded it, however, the objective section, the final bullet where it talks about the resiliency and emergency response, I kind of stumbled on that bullet a little. And I wonder if other council members perhaps have thoughts on that bullet as well. Specifically, I guess the last line of that bullet, it's saying that changes to the configuration of the airport or the types of operations or, these things, that it would diminish the overall benefits provided by the airport. But I'm not sure that we've necessarily defined concretely what the overall benefits are. Obviously, the ability to have helicopters, come in and out that could potentially bring services, this is a helpful thing. If the runway is all kaputs because it's been in, it's this liquefaction soil type area, then that brings up another question mark. So I was just wondering, how do we work with that, and are we framing it in the best way in that bullet? Does that make sense to the other counselors, or?
To specifically call out emergency helicopters, I mean, that's the one that would leave us unprepared if they went somewhere else.
And perhaps if you changed the word would to could, there has been a history of housing emergency helicopters that can provide emergency services. I think calling that out, and then, because we don't know what's going to happen.
I suppose we don't know technologies that will come either.
Said especially emergency service helicopter, or emergency helicopter services.
Okay. So I do want to say that we have 2 more items for the work session, and if you have other concise comments now, let's make them.
Well, we just need to be sure that we know that Life Flight flies airplanes in and out of there too. It's not just helicopters.
Correct.
Yes.
So we don't, we don't want to negatively impact that either. So.
And
Okay,
Yeah.
so not a lot of, do you have a point in mind, a different way of addressing that bullet maybe that is different?
Well, I don't have exact wording that I would include in that bullet, but I think that the concept of making sure that those existing services and the emergency services, that they're maintained, that's the part that I would underscore, I guess. However that can be wordsmithed into the bullet or the verbiage.
That's really helpful feedback. Okay. And just for the council to be aware, that was actually a conversation at the Planning Commission meeting last Wednesday as well. That was the bullet point that they was the least clear, not as well written as the rest, and that they had some conversation on, so really helpful input.
Okay, so you've got what you need for that? Thank you very much, and I do hope you can do something about the magnitude of prime farmland in there, not just that it contains some good soil. Okay, so we'll now go to our, thank you very much for that. We'll go to our legislative concepts, and we have, I think we do have enough time for our second 2 items, hopefully. We have 20 minutes for this one.
I did see the PowerPoint, and it is impressive.
But I'm sure they've prepared to be concise.
Maybe we can just ask them to
They know how to do this.
Yeah.
streamline it to
I
the
don't want to
greatest
say they're
extent
fast
possible,
talkers.
given the beefy nature of the items that we have for tonight.
Yes.
Remembering that we've had opportunity to review.
Yeah.
Do we, yeah. No. Okay. Now where is the chair?
We have the magic Zoom window.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Mark Ottenett, Public and Government Affairs Director here, and with me tonight is Greg Leal, our Public Affairs Consultant. Our topic tonight is potential draft 2023 legislative concepts for consideration as bills for introduction to the Oregon Legislative Assembly. I will note at the outset that the city has worked with the cities of Aurora, Friends of French Prairie, 1,000 Friends of Oregon, League of Oregon Cities, Oregon Economic Development Association, and others, including TriMet, in developing these various legislative concepts. The 4 legislative concepts include Aurora State Airport Coordinated Intergovernmental Planning, a public utilities requirement for state airports of 150 acres, and transportation facility does not provide land use goal exception.
Smart service territory alignment with city boundaries, adjustment of the TriMet district boundary.
Number 3 is ODOT Public Transportation Division study of West Side Express Service, North Willamette Valley extension from Wilsonville to Salem with stops in Woodburn and Kaiser.
Number 4 is reauthorize and fund the Oregon Business Regionally Significant Industrial Sites, RSIS program.
So looking at the first legislative concept pertaining to the Aurora State Airport.
There are many issues of concern, and much of this, I think you know, so this is a bit of a review, but the Oregon Department of Aviation had a 10-year track record of inability to work collaboratively with the local communities of Aurora and Wilsonville. ODAV defended for 10 years the illegal 2012 Aurora State Airport Master Plan before the Oregon Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court, which ruled in 2021 that the 2012 Master Plan was invalid. Oregon Department of Aviation finally conceded in 2022 that the 2012 Master Plan was invalid.
We will note that the Department of Aviation is the only state agency that lacks a certified state agency coordination program agreement regarding land use issues. Furthermore, as was noted by Councilor Lehan earlier, in 2010, Aviation did an IGA intergovernmental agreement with a gerrymandered map of the airport impact area to exclude the local communities and governments of Clackamas County and Wilsonville prior to the start of the failed 2012 master plan effort.
I think you can see from the slide of the two maps side by side, and this is described by Councilor Lehan earlier, that the impacted area had a kind of a boundary cut out of it at the county line. So the 2012 IGA map showing the gerrymandered Aurora impact area on one side, on the other side, the 10,000-foot airport impact area.
Demonstrating that Wilsonville and Clackamas County are affected jurisdictions.
Yep.
We have issues of concern. There's a new 2022 Aurora State Airport Master Plan effort, and it's appearing to be a check-the-box predetermined outcome where the agency has packed the pack, the Planning Advisory Committee, with a majority of self-dealing financial interests favoring taxpayer-funded airport expansion. And a recent FAA review, Federal Aviation Administration, of the draft working papers for the new master plan found over 24 issues of concern, including ones raised by the city.
So the specific legislative concept for the Aurora State Airport is, number 1, state agencies and local government intergovernmental agreement, or an IGA, to approve all airport projects. Number 2, clear, objective, and specific land use regulations for state airports located outside of cities. 3, codify in law a prohibition on goal exceptions currently in the administrative rules against reliance on a transportation facility as the basis of a goal exception.
The IGA, or Intergovernmental Agreement, will be an inclusive, transparent intergovernmental communications forum and decision-making process between state agencies, the state departments of aviation, ag, environmental quality, lands conservation development, and transportation, and participating affected local governments of Clackamas and Marion counties and the cities of Aurora and Wilsonville.
We want consensus agreement of IGA parties required for advancing any airport expansion or project listed in the airport master plan or airport layout plan. Marion County maintains the current land use approval and permitting process. IGA issues for review would include surface transportation impacts on local state roads, safety and traffic congestion issues, the provision of public transit services to the airport.
Additionally, additional specific issues include environmental assessments of current pollution levels, planning for the eventual potential annexation of the airport to the city of Aurora for municipal governments and urban infrastructure services, and the Department of Aviation's implementation of components of the agency state agency coordination program would be required in the IGA.
Clear, objective, and specific land use regulations for rural state airports located outside cities. This applies to airports with total footprints of both public and adjacent through-the-fence properties totaling 150 acres or more located in unincorporated county lands. It would also require the provision of public infrastructure services for water and wastewater processing and stormwater. And finally, the through-the-fence statute amended to limit through the fence commercial and industrial development would be limited to 50 acres.
We would codify in law a prohibition on goal exceptions that's currently in administrative rules, but is not in statute. So the current administrative prohibition against reliance on a transportation facility as the basis for a goal exception would then be moved into statute.
So I would say every time we work on the airport, we learn a little bit more. The legal history here guides us, I think, in providing provisions which, make this a much better proposal. It's collaborative in the sense that it has the IGA. And so I think that it's been a very well defined document. Okay. Next legislative concept is the smart service territory alignment with city boundaries, and that's the adjustment of the TriMet district boundary.
Issues of concern with this include, we have areas within the city of Wilsonville that fall within the service and taxing district of TriMet, where TriMet collects the money but provides no transit service to the employees or the community. In 2016, the City Council adopted a resolution declaring its intent to have the service boundaries of SMART, our transit agency, be coterminous with the Wilsonville city limits.
Legislation would provide for a long-term solution by modifying in one action the TriMet district territory boundary to include those areas that the city may conceivably annex eventually or as adjacent UGB expansion areas and within the 50-year time span of the metro area urban reserves.
So specifically, almost 2,000 acres would be removed from the TriMet district, and these would be the city's UGB expansion areas, including Coffee Creek, parts of Basalt Creek, West Railroad, and Frog Pond East, and the city's adjacent urban reserves, Tonquin, Elligson, Norwood, and Frog Pond East that are listed there.
Transit payroll collection from TriMet to the city. Oregon Department of Corrections in Coffee Creek, the Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, Ellingson Road, Station 53, and the Westland Wilsonville School District, Meridian Creek Middle School are all areas that will be employment centers that the payroll tax would then come to SMART and the city rather than to TriMet.
SMART is to assume responsibility for providing public transit service, including dollar ride medical transport services between Tualatin and Wilsonville, from the Tualatin Transit Center to the Wilsonville Transit Center. This allows TriMet to concentrate on its focused territory of the greater Portland metro area.
So I just say in summary, this legislative proposal for coterminous boundaries helps the city grow transit service consistent with the growth of the city boundaries. The third legislative concept is ODOT Public Transportation Division study of the West-North Willamette Valley extension from Wilsonville to Salem with stops in Woodburn and in Kaiser.
Issues of concern here include the lack of sufficient alternative public commute options along I-5 from Salem-Kaiser, North Willamette Valley to the Portland area. Further, there's major new traffic generators along I-5 south of Wilsonville, a $3.6 million Amazon warehouse in Woodburn with 1,500 plus workers and hundreds of new delivery trucks. The Siletz Tribe has proposed a hotel casino complex in North Salem with nearly 1,500 jobs and over 7,100 new weekday trips, most of which will originate from the Portland metro region.
ODOT Public Transportation Division, the rail operations statewide multimodal network unit, in conjunction with WEST, sponsored TriMet and WEST operator Portland and Western Railroad, study and document the various costs, the benefits, the operational issues of extending the current rush hour only West Side Express commuter train from the current southern terminus to Wilsonville and Wilsonville to Salem, with the potential stops at Woodburn, Donald, and Kaiser. And I just would like to point out the map here on the next one, where we use the portion of the 122-mile Oregon Electric Railroad Willamette Valley route. This is like an old idea. If we've listened to Charlotte's histories over time, we realize we had an electric railroad in 1908 when we built the trestle. This actually brings back that same route into a similar kind of commuter use. Used now by the Short Line Portland Western Railroad, a division of Genesee and Wyoming, Inc.
So specific legislative concepts for the West Extension Study would be to engage SMART, Salem-Kaiser Transit, Woodburn Transit to provide bus connections to the West Rail stops in Wilsonville, Woodburn, Donald, Kaiser, and Salem. And the transit agencies would be charged to develop last-mile connections from West Station stop to each of the communities they serve. And we are recommending an allocation of $500,000 for this study.
This is a visionary concept, and one which looks to the future, I think. The final and fourth proposal tonight is to reauthorize and fund the State Business Oregon Regionally Significant Industrial Sites, or what we've referred to as RSIS program.
Issues of concern here include that local governments have only one major financing tool to create shovel-ready industrial lands, and that's urban renewal or tax increment financing. But if you have no development already, it's difficult to generate revenue. The state is a major beneficiary of family wage industrial jobs through higher income tax collection, while cities have more incentive for residential and commercial development due to higher property tax rates.
To reauthorize the RSIS program, that's the sunset in 2023, is the first priority. We need to appropriate money. The RSIS program has never really been fully funded. Over 10 local governments across the state have applied since 2018, but to date, no funding has been available. LOC, OEDA, which is the Oregon Economic Development Association, Business Oregon, and industry, Metro, and others have discussed working together to reauthorize the RSIS program and to provide a $50 million appropriation. This would fund an important program.
So in summary, these are the 4 legislative concepts that are now before you for your consideration to advance to the office of Representative Courtney Neron, who has indicated an interest in willing to advance legislative concepts to legal counsel for construction as potential legislation in the 2023 legislative session.
We're pleased to address any questions you may have about these 4 legislative concept proposals.
Thank you. Before we start, I just wanted to ask about the timeline, since we have one more presentation today. If we take a few minutes right now and discuss it, what is our next opportunity to have further emailing, discussions? What else is needed?
Legislative concepts are due this Friday to the Legislative Council, so time is of the essence.
All right. Thank you. Councilor West.
Thank you for that presentation. Because we're in election season, right? So just how does it work, like down in Salem? So let's say Courtney gets the ball rolling on XYZ legislation that's proposed. Courtney doesn't win, or we have a different delegation down there. Do they just roll with it from her? How does that work? Like if it's changed, or there's a little uncertainty there. What's that process like?
Yeah, we're trying to sync up the political process. Excuse me, Mayor, members of the City Council, or Councilor West, excuse me. We're trying to sync up the political calendar and the legislative calendar. So basically the deadline this Friday is to get it to the Legislative Council, who has to draft the legislation. It starts the ball rolling. It kind of gets it in writing, and then after the election, when our delegation and other legislators are known, that's when we start having the conversations directly with those legislators.
Yeah, thanks for
This is to make sure we don't miss the train at the stop.
Got it. Thank you.
No pun intended. Yeah. Okay. I would say that I think these legislative concepts all reflect our council goals. I'm in support of them. Any other councilors?
Sound excellent.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to our next presentation. I'm going to keep the meeting moving.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Thank you.
And we have Mr. Lorenzen to talk about construction excise tax for affordable housing. And we're 1 minute early, if we don't have a break. No, we're going to have a break. Okay. We're not really 1 minute early.
You're doing a great job with it. Just keep this going. You're doing good.
Got it here, but it's not there.
Spinny wheel.
Where's mine?
Let's see here. It says I am screen sharing. I will stop and then start it again. How's that? Okay. And I'm not going to fuss with it to get it onto the absolute full screen, if that's all right.
Sure.
Oh, maybe I can. Let's see here. View.
Maybe that one.
Someone help me out here. There, full screen mode. It's so much more difficult when you're under pressure, right? Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm back to talk about CET for affordable housing. Again, we met and discussed this topic in July. And so to begin, I just want to quickly review sort of where we've been to tee up and add some context for some of the items you asked me to discuss with you tonight. And we'll do that as succinctly as possible. Forgive me if it feels rushed. We're doing the best we can. So as we discussed last time, we're talking about this now because it was part of some council goals. We also discussed that federal funding toward affordable housing has been curtailed pretty significantly in the past decade or two. We talked about how this CET and equitable housing is an adopted plan of the city, and that the master planning process going on in Frog Pond is also highly concerned about equitable housing and housing opportunities for home ownership and those seeking what we're calling in that meeting absolutely affordable housing or deeply affordable housing, and by that we mean below market. We talked about how the complexity of an affordable housing project is that it is much more complex than a market rate project, and that there are multiple sources of funds, and that a local contribution is an important one and often sort of a keystone in being able to unlock some other sources of funds. We discussed how the funds are allocated once they've been collected at the city level. Some of it does go back to the state through their down payment assistance program, but the vast majority stays at the local level and funds programming that of the city's own design. The specific statutory requirements of how the city uses it are fairly broad and leaves a broad license to the city to design our own programs. And there is a certain amount that is unrestricted. We talked about how there are others before us who have adopted a construction excise tax, and some of them are our close neighbors. McMinnville just recently adopted their policy in 2021. And we'll talk a little bit about their policy and their process in just a moment. We also took a look at what a forecasted revenue might be. And this number that's on the screen right now is by no means the number. This is just one hypothetical scenario that we looked at. This one in particular shows a 1% tax on the permit valuation for everything except additions and alterations to single-family dwellings. So tonight, what we'd like to do is sort of set the stage a little bit. Last meeting, if I did any disservice, I think it was to maybe, I don't want to say that I presented it in an overly simplified fashion, but I want to spend some time tonight at least digging into some of the nuance and some of the important considerations that I think are important as we look at this a little bit more closely. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that this is the road we go down, but it is, I think it is an accepted fact that in order to get to deep affordability for a certain portion of the new housing that will be constructed in Wilsonville, some revenue source is needed. Period, end of sentence. Whether or not the CET for affordable housing is the question that we have to grapple with. As I mentioned, we'll take a look at some case studies from McMinnville, Milwaukee, and then I did add some more information from Bend, which I didn't mention in the staff report, and then we'll talk about where we go from here, hopefully in the next 16 minutes. So, again, things to consider. The cost of our total permit and fee package. First, we'll look at this as it pertains to single-family homes. This is just one example, but this is a recently permitted single-family project in Frog Pond Ridge subdivision. The valuation on that permit, you see on the screen, roughly $338,000. A hypothetical CET for affordable housing on that would be 1% or whatever rate we set, but for purpose of discussion today, 1%. There are other CETs already in effect, and I think that's important to note. The school district has one, Metro has one. They don't fund affordable housing, they fund other things. I also want to add an asterisk that doesn't appear on your screen next to this total permit and fee package. You see $70,000. This is a unique, somewhat unique in that this comes from Frog Pond, where there's a special infrastructure fee overlay, totaling, I think on this permit, roughly $23,000. So if you were to back that out, the total cost comes down pretty significantly. So if another single family home were to be constructed elsewhere in the city, that total number would be far lower. The CET, on the other hand, would be roughly the same because that's a function of the permit valuation. The consideration here, though, is clearly that in an effort to achieve housing affordability, we would be adding another fee on top of what is already a fairly expensive per door package in Wilsonville. This bar graph shows you where we fit into the mix in a relatively recent study that was done on behalf of the city of Oregon City. Of course, this doesn't reflect that Frog Pond fee. This is just sort of the baseline SDCs combined. So we're not at the top, but definitely in the top third. If we consider an industrial project, this is a case study at the recent Coffee Creek Logistics Center. Just about $5.5 million, a 1% hypothetical CET there. Again, we don't know exactly what this hypothetical fee would do to the project's feasibility, but you at least get some context for what this looks like in the greater scheme of their fee package. Here again, we're among the higher jurisdictions for the combined SDC package. This doesn't account for building permits and plan review and that, but this does show SDCs.
Excuse me, Matt, does that green line show if the hypothetical fee is represented in that green line, or is that today's?
It doesn't. This study was done in April, and so this would not account for any.
Okay, thank you.
Affordable housing CET. Another contextual consideration is just the fact that we're leaders in things that we do want to be leaders in, and that is just the diversity of housing that already exists in Wilsonville. The 50-50 multifamily to single family unit ratio is something we're proud of, and I think it's just important to note that it's not as if there's a dearth of multifamily housing in Wilsonville. We just need to, I think, just state that objectively as a fact. In terms of the affordable housing inventory, here's what we look like in comparison to other regional neighbors. This number that you see is the number of income-restricted units per 1,000 units in these cities or jurisdictions. There's a few counties there. So Multnomah County and Portland out in front, but in terms of nearby cities, Wilsonville is providing what I would consider a pretty respectable amount of income-restricted and affordable housing units. So again, it's not as if there's a complete lack, and I think that's just important to consider as we look at to what extent and how serious we want to get about supporting the development of yet more affordable housing in the city. Additionally, and I'll go through these points just a little bit more quickly, I would remind the council that we recently adopted our vertical housing development zone, which of course is very geographically limited, but nonetheless, it's an existing incentive that works for both market rate and low income housing. So that program caps out at an 80% 10-year tax abatement, but for income restricted units, it could go as high as 100%. So we do have already an incentive sort of on the books that would help with the type of development that a CET would also help with. There are other tools and programs that we could consider, one of which I will be back here in October to talk to you about, and that is using urban renewal as a potential tool for the development of affordable housing. Additionally, and we talked about this last meeting, there are other example programs in other jurisdictions that get at something this council has expressed interest in, and that is facilitating first-time home buyer opportunities. I would just remind again, though, that many of these programs are a cost to the city and not a revenue generator. So there's no source to backfill from, and that's where the CET would come in. As we're all aware, we're anxiously awaiting the uptick in the development trajectory in the Coffee Creek area, and I think it's important to think about how an additional fee may affect development in that area. And then again, just a reminder that even though there are alternatives, even though we have, well, to some extent there are alternatives, even though we have the VHDZ, even though we have a strong multifamily inventory, there is still a persistent demand for deep affordable housing in the region, and it's probably not going to change anytime soon. So to what extent do we play our role as a regional partner to continue to meet that need? The last one, and I'll touch on this again, as we look at programming, it's not only the cost of the incentive to build the type of product we're looking for, but it's the cost of administering those programs as well. And so just bear in mind that especially with something like a first-time homebuyer program where you're fielding applications on an individual basis and monitoring those properties once they come online on an individual basis, there's a lot of administrative burden that comes with that, and that's an important consideration as well. In other words, there's a need for revenue to support that administrative burden. So other jurisdictions that have introduced the CET, I talked to Milwaukee, and they're fairly recent adopters. I'll just call out maybe a couple things here. Their priorities when they first created the program as a council were to really try and focus on what they broadly defined as families. And they were more interested in working with small developers, and I'm not sure how they defined that, but they didn't want to work with these massive development corporations, and they didn't want to be subsidizing the further enrichment, I guess, of what they perceived as the already rich development community. But they quickly found that supporting families was legally problematic from an equitable housing law standpoint and had to shift away from that policy goal. And then getting back to the point I was just making about administrative burden, when they were working with smaller developers who were perhaps less experienced in this area as opposed to larger ones, they were usually bringing less funds to the table in terms of either federal or regional dollars, philanthropic dollars, et cetera. And so interestingly, they've kind of shifted on both of those points. And like I mentioned, legally, they've needed to shift away from trying to fund families. And then they've actually gone 180 and said they're actually looking for large projects that are bringing federal money to the table, because then they can outsource that administrative burden, because when federal dollars are involved, then HUD becomes the overseeing entity for compliance matters. So they were able to sort of retool there. You can see what kind of revenue they are generating, and just give one example here. This is actually a market rate project, but this is where the former Kellogg Bowl exists, for those that want a reference point. It's 178 market rate units. The CET generated by this project alone was $370,000. And they, you know, my question was, what was the developer's reaction to paying that fee? And so they're largely used to paying this fee in Portland, especially where they've had it on the books for quite a while now. That was their experience. I'll need to speed up a little bit. Trying to think of what to take out of here. The one thing that McMinnville really called out was, I said, well, how are you programming your funds? Because they just recently adopted their policy. How are you going to spend your money? And they said, well, right now we've left it very open and flexible. In their words, they were basically saying we don't want to paint ourselves into a corner by specifically defining how we're going to spend the money, because a lot of it is opportunity driven. If a piece of land becomes available for sale, for example, or if a developer comes to the city with a proposal that they do want to support, they wanted to be able to leave their goals sufficiently broad so that they could support those opportunities as they arose. So they were kind of discouraging this idea that you would want to pre-program your money too specifically from the outset. Bend, again, is is the longest existing program. Their program actually predates the state statute that enabled CET. The one thing that I guess I'll mention here and point out is just the leverage that you see at the bottom. So by dispersing $4 million toward these projects, the match that was brought to the table through private equity and other grants and sources of funds, brought significantly more. And then you see the amount of units, and so therefore the impact that they're seeing for, it's no small amount of money, but a little bit of money was able to leverage a lot of impact. So with just a couple minutes remaining and probably hardly any for discussion, I think the point we're at today, unless you tell me otherwise, I see kind of three options before us. We can say this is not for us. We're worried about X, Y, or Z, or whatever reason. We can pause. This is, as was pointed out earlier, and as we were just talking about, it's election season. It's a turbulent time. It might be appropriate to pause this discussion until a new council can look at it. Or if we're feeling pretty enthusiastic, we can move forward and continue following the path that was outlined in the equitable housing strategic plan. And the next step, according to that, would be to convene stakeholders from a broad representation and start actually the process of forming this policy and discussing what it would look like, and then bringing that back to the council for your discussion and critique. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We do just have a short amount of time, and we need to start our council meeting, so that's our first challenge. My ears really perked up when you talked about convening stakeholders, because I think this process elevates the role of some of the tools that also need more study. we know that we have to bring money in from outside, from somewhere, to fund these affordable houses. We are not just going to be doing this magically out of some account that we didn't know we had. I don't think we have that, right?
No.
But there is a potential of convening our community again to talk about this. And I would bring up one of the, we looked at that bar chart that you had, which had things like philanthropy. It had some other ways of, there are some other ways that you've mentioned that we've seen other cities do that could be done. Other ways of taxing. You really have to get money from somewhere, and maybe a multitude of ways. If we don't do anything, we will definitely not be able to have first-time home buyer opportunities. That seems very clear to me. Councillor Linville, is this your?
Yeah, but I'll wait till.
No, go ahead.
Well, I know that we don't have time to discuss this, and I think it's, I appreciate that you've done a lot of work on this. I think it's easy to put something like this in the strategic plan when you don't know all the details. So, and I appreciate that you've done that work. I don't feel like I am ready to either scrap it or move forward this evening. And I don't see any reason that we are in such a rush that we would have to make that decision tonight. So regardless of election timing, I'm feeling like I think we need to look at all the alternatives or some other alternatives as well as this one before we settle in on a yes or a no specifically.
Thank you. Council President Akkerval.
Thanks. I agree. I don't know. I agree with everything. I appreciate the work that has gone into this. I appreciate your presentation. I hope that you could email it to us because I know you had to cover some of those bullets really quickly. And I would like to read the bullets myself too and spend a little bit more time to digest that. I'm recalling on one of your slides, one of the graphs had that Tualatin had 64 units out of 1,000. And what pops into my mind is, well, how did Tualatin get to 64 units without CET? And you've mentioned that there's some other tools out there. Okay, so I want to know, what are they using? But at this point, I don't know that I have a definite answer in my own mind that this is the right tool or that this isn't the right tool. But I agree with comments that have been made by the mayor and Councillor Linville that we do need some tool to get us to our goals and to be able to have affordable housing and have a place for, all of our community members to thrive living in Wilsonville. So,
thank you.
That's where I am tonight. Thanks.
Excellent. Summary, Councillor West.
Thank you. Great presentation. Thanks for all your hard work. My gut by default tells me we can't tax something over and over again and more of it to make it more affordable. And this is just another layer of tax that's not new, and we still have chronic, persistent affordability problems. My default is kind of bristling a little bit to the idea, but I still have a lot of questions and would like to know more. And I still have some answers that I think need to happen before I could get behind something like this. But I'm quite skeptical of this being the right avenue. But I really appreciate your presentation, and I completely agree with my fellow councilors that just spoke.
Thank you, Councillor West. It sounds like we are going to pause this.
Okay. Do I have a direction to just stop everything right now, or?
No, definitely not stop everything, because we need to continue. And I did hear you say that the council is leaning toward first home buyer. We've shown an interest. I think we have a very firm interest in that, and it's more than just leaning, and it's one of our council goals. And so we have a challenge in how to do that. So I think the direction is you suggested the idea of pausing, but I guess that may not be what I mean. I think we need to keep studying some of the other methods. And I don't hear a consensus to definitely go for CET. Is that not helpful?
I think it's helpful. I think the reality is that there aren't a lot of good options out there. Urban renewal is something that maybe holds some promise, but that's going to be site specific. But if you want to do something that provides you the flexibility to do something to achieve affordability, this is really the tool that's out there. But we can certainly.
I don't think we're saying no, you know, and I heard, heard the urban renewal. I heard people were interested in that. I personally was I saw the commercial possibility, you could go below 1%. So because this is not a decision-making moment.
Yeah, and I think the idea wasn't to design the program tonight. The idea was to say, is this a tool that you want us to explore? So that if you did decide you want to move forward, then you get into the weeds on how much for commercial, industrial, residential.
I think we want to continue to explore.
Okay, so I think we'll look at what other programs are out there to raise money and include the CET as a tool to use as well.
Are there private sector like partnerships and nonprofits?
Yes.
Yeah, but you have to bring some money to the table to enter into those public-private partnerships. It's kind of like the TOD development that we're looking at the West Station.
Not impossible. Okay. Thank you very much, Matt.
Could say more, but.
I will adjourn the work session. Thank you very much, Matt. And we will reconvene in.
It's up to you.
7 minutes?
You'll have to.
Let's do 5 minutes, and I do mean reconvene, not. What?
The mayor's after us with her.
I think of Thor. I get a Thor image when you do that.
Good evening. I'm calling to order a meeting of the Wilsonville City Council at 7:12 p.m. on September 19th, and we will start with the roll call with the city recorder.
Councilor Linville? Here. Councilor West?
Are we on? Yeah, hold on. Am I on? I'm here.
Council President Ockervall?
Here.
Councilor Lehan?
Here.
Mayor Fitzgerald?
Here. We'll now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have a motion to approve the following order of agenda?
Your Honor, I move to approve the order of agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. So briefly, under mayor's comments, I'm going to just highlight the legislative concepts that we just reviewed in our work session. And if enacted, those legislative concepts would fulfill our council goals. Our local state representative, Courtney Neron of House District 26, represents the city of Wilsonville. Representative Neron has been apprised of these legislative concepts, and she has indicated a willingness to consider introducing legislation on behalf of the city, if we should ask. And the legislative concepts, as we heard earlier, are due on September 23rd to Legislative Council. I'll just briefly review the 4 concepts that we reviewed and discussed. Those are and we have them on the screen here. You can see the Aurora State Airport Coordinated Intergovernmental Planning, the Smart Service Territory Alignment with City Boundaries, which would adjust our it would enable our transit district, which is known as SMART, to cover the coterminous boundary of the city and into the future. You can read more about that in the packet. Third concept was ODOT Public Transportation Division Study of West, which is the commuter rail that some of us ride from Wilsonville to Portland, and that is considering the North Willamette Valley extension of that commuter train to Salem from Wilsonville, and with stops conceived in Woodburn and Kaiser. And then the 4th legislative fund is to reauthorize the Business Oregon Regionally Significant Industrial Sites Program. We had a good discussion earlier in the evening to discuss these concepts. I would like to ask for a motion from Council President Ockervall to advance a request to Representative Neron to consider submitting the city's legislative concepts to Legislative Council as potential bill drafts for the 2023 legislative session.
Your Honor, I move to advance the concepts in the manner that you just described.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion about these concepts?
Yeah, I would just say that I was very impressed with the presentation that we had from our 2 legislative advisors, and I thought they covered it very well, and I think we're in good shape to move forward.
Thank you.
We're going, sorry, I should have pushed the button. We're going into the, maybe they can talk offline, but we're going into the long session, right? So we're the biannual, and so much can happen between now and then, and things come up that become quite controversial. Is it common for us to also advance additional legislation down the road, or is this like our one kind of shot that we're voting on? Or should we be aware, and how do we keep apprised during the session?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, we certainly want to be responsive, and we want to react and represent our citizens.
Come up. We're getting nods from our guys.
This is the end of the opportunity.
Okay.
It's the start, right?
Okay.
Good question. Any other concepts? Okay.
Sorry. If I may, I agree with comments made by Councillor Lehan there on the presentation that we received during work session. And in fact, I wonder if we could get a copy of those slides as well, since they did such an excellent job of detailing what exactly these 4 bullet points that we're looking at now, what all is included in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, that is really good to get those slides to all the councilors. We also had a very detailed written summary in the packet. And I guess I would just comment that I am very enthused about these 4 concepts. The first one allows us to really proceed, if this would go through, which I certainly hope it would, to proceed in a really organized, dignified manner with all of the stakeholders to plan ahead with regard to the Aurora State Airport Coordinated Intergovernmental Planning. And I mentioned something about the our smart transportation alignment, which I think brings a lot of benefits with climate change, traffic. One of the biggest things we talk about all day long are those 2 issues, and also equity, getting people to and from work, getting to school from their home, reducing traffic on Wilsonville Road so that students can ride the bus to school, the TriMet to and from school event, or the SMART to and from school events, and also can access, can go from SMART to TriMet when they want to go outside of the district or they need to go to Salem. So making our SMART service more robust helps people move around more easily and more effectively, and it just covers a lot of great benefits. And then the third one, the ODOT Public Transportation Division, extending west to Salem. I'm just very enthused about seeing that study start, and we've talked about that a number of times. It also covers many of those same points that a more robust transit service for our entire city would do. And then certainly the RSIS program, I'll just shorten it to that, is something that is very much needed for us to expand industrial sites so that Wilsonville can continue to be a leader in providing and making possible the attraction of high-wage jobs for today and in the future. So I don't see any other comments.
A quick one.
Councillor West.
Thank you. It's my understanding that there'll be a local effort to potentially fix House Bill 3055, which is the implementation of tolling. There's a lot of angst rising about that. I hope we join in that conversation as that legislation potentially comes about and keep us abreast of it to see if it's something that we need to divulge into to protect Wilsonville and its commuters.
Thank you. And I think the distinction here is that these are bills that we're introducing, and so it doesn't limit us from participating in other bills that are introduced. So with that, I will call the question and ask for all those in favor of the motion to say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And just briefly, just touching on some of the things that I've been doing since our last meeting, we had the emergency preparedness fair this Saturday. It was a lot of fun. We had city staff was there and some of our partners with great tables, 12, from fire and police to safety, water, everything that you need. They just had great interaction with the public on how to put together their emergency preparedness kit. I think this is the first step, and we have more to go, but many people were there with their go bag. Council President Ockervall had hers as well. And last week, I testified before the Oregon Transportation Commission. By the way, I presented issues of concern by the City Council that we have discussed quite a bit here recently, and this was with regard to the Oregon Highway Plan Toll Amendment. The points I really brought up were that we need to make sure that the people within our city who specifically live in the Charbonneau district and have depended on I-5 for their local trips and essential services are exempt from paying a toll to just go about their daily business. We also recommended that ODOT consider a maximum daily toll for anyone in the whole state who's, if they do this tolling, so that it's manageable. I know they have a lot of equity factors built into the plans, but we considered that there should be a maximum daily toll, and we also recommended that and asked that in this amendment, ODOT implement a standard for meaningful community engagement with elected officials and community leaders. And also, many of those points were echoed in letters submitted to the Oregon Transportation Committee by both Clackamas and Washington County coordinating committees. Upcoming events, I think some other counselors might mention that, but I do want to say that I'm attending an economic development conference with Matt Lorenz and our city economic development manager this week. We'll meet with regional and business leaders, including the mayor of Oakland, California, who has helped to lead an economic revitalization of that city, and they've been experiencing some really positive developments in residential building. I'm also going to attend a Metro workshop on the upcoming regional transportation update, which has been an ongoing workshop. And my last upcoming event that others are very welcome to attend, I think it'll be a great thing to attend, is on October 1st, Saturday, October 1st, between 11 and 2 p.m. The council is invited to attend an open house of the new Charbonneau Fire Station number 4, and it's adjacent to the Willamette Professional Building on Miley Road next to our Charbonneau neighborhood.
Can you give the date again?
It is October 1st.
October 1st.
10 to 2?
It is from 11 to 2. And I will forward that or ask, so I think you got it, yeah. So, and just a little point on that, the COVID protocols delayed a grand opening of this station, which did open in September of 2021. It's a 2,600 square foot station that has a paramedic vehicle, sleeping quarters, a supply room, kitchen, and exercise room. And two employees operate out of the station and respond to medical calls, which make up a large percentage of requests to the Charbonneau neighborhood of Wilsonville. The new facility will provide Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue faster response times to medical emergencies and will allow it to more easily assist the Charbonneau neighborhood in case of a natural disaster. And our next city council meeting is scheduled for Monday, October 3rd at 3 p.m.
Three? No.
Why did I say that? 7 p.m.
Wow.
Sorry, I said I saw October 3rd at 7 p.m. Thanks for see, I'm just seeing if you're listening.
We got you.
You really are. You're doing a great job of listening. They're here for me. Yeah. So, that concludes the mayor's business, and we'll now move to the communications section of our agenda. I don't think we have anything planned for this. So that brings us to our community input and citizen input and community announcements. And as you see on the screen, this is an opportunity for visitors to address the City Council on items not on the agenda. It's also a time to address items that are on the agenda but are not scheduled for a public hearing. Staff and the City Council will make every effort to respond to questions raised during citizens' input before tonight's meeting ends or as quickly as possible thereafter. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And we do have some people here tonight. And I don't know if we have anyone on the Zoom call, but if so, they should raise their hand, use the raise hand feature of Zoom to let us know if they'd like to provide comments. So I'd like to start with, and I have these cards, start with Joseph Schaefer. Thank you. And we have your address on file, and you're welcome to repeat it, but we do have it on file.
Thank you. Joseph Schaefer, City of Aurora, Madam Mayor and councilors. I'm just here to say thank you for your work tonight regarding the Aurora Airport, both the comprehensive plan work as well as the work on the legislative proposals. Gave a shout out for Mark and Greg, who I've worked closely with on the legislative proposals, as well as Ryan and Amanda, who of course are your legal beagles. That aspect of the work continues. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about those two items.
Councilor Lehan?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you likewise to Mr. Schaefer, because he has been a tremendous advisor throughout for all of us, and helped us in many ways. So thank you for all of your assistance as well. It's been a team effort in many ways.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much, Joseph, for all of your work and for continuing to really pay attention to these matters, and also our incredibly valuable farmland.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Come back again. So next, I would like to go to two students who are here with us today, Bianca Pinoli and Caitlin LeBlanc. And I will say that you might have noticed as you drove down Wilsonville Road this weekend that there was a car wash with signs directing you, and that was for the robotics team. And I went in there and was waiting for my car. It was pretty fast. I didn't wait too long, but I was so interested to hear about what they're doing, I asked if they'd like to tell us about it at City Council. So thank you.
For the record, my name is Caitlin LeBlanc, and my address is as written on my speaker card.
For the record, my name is Bianca Pinoli, and my address is as written on my speaker card.
Okay, so like I said, I'm Caitlin LeBlanc. I'm a senior at Wilsonville High School.
And I'm Bianca Pinoli, and I'm a sophomore at Wilsonville High School.
So today we're here to talk to you about the Wilsonville Robotics team called Error Code 0, what we do, and invite you to an exciting event that we have coming up. So a little bit of background about our team. Our robotics team's motto is called Building Robots, Building People, and we provide a real-world, hands-on environment for students to learn a variety of technical, organizational, and life skills while building a highly competitive robot. So right now our team is about 35 students, and it's structured much like an organization with different departments, which we call sub-teams, and we all share tasks and work together to create a final product, which in this case is the robot. So our 7 sub-teams include electrical, business, mechanical, software, design, strategy, and scouting. While the main focus of the team is to build a competitive robot each season, our team teaches students much more than that. For example, we are both on the business sub-team and learn about fundraising, event planning, marketing, time management, and organizational skills. Of course, we couldn't do all of this without the mentor support, and our team is very fortunate to have many mentors that are professionals in the areas that they support.
A little more about our preseason competition. Our team competes every year in the first robotics competition season, which runs from January through April. We spend most of the off-season sharpening our skills, recruiting new team members, and raising funds to support the team throughout the season. In the fall, we spend most of our time fundraising and preparing for preseason competitions that help us learn and practice for the actual season. We host one of the preseason competitions at Wilsonville High School, which is called Girls' Generation. The goal of this event is to maximize female engagement within FIRST Robotics and increase interest in the field of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, also known as STEM. The Girls' Generation event will be held on October 15th, and we would love for you guys to stop by and check out what we do.
Thank you very much for your time. We will email the City Council with more information about the team and our upcoming events, and we look forward to seeing you at Girls' Gen.
Thank you for your presentation. Yeah. Councilor Lehan has a question.
Yes. I just wanted to know if you also designed your shirts, because I didn't have a chance to stop and get my car washed, but you couldn't help but notice these extremely colorful and attractive shirts up and down the street. So can you tell me something about that design?
Yeah, a few years ago, one student on our team hand drew the flame, and so that's been part of our logo for quite a few years now, and we've added different features to it to match the season competition. So I don't know if you can see on mine, there's an airplane, which last year's season was about transportation, so we kind of modify it every year to make something that represents our season and our team a little bit.
Oh, well, those are fabulous, fabulous design work.
Well, I know that we have celebrated our sports teams, number of teams. We've talked about the debate team, and now we've talked about the robotics team. So it's really exciting to see all of your great work, and look forward to staying tuned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Yes.
Thank you.
And our next speaker is Miles Pengwilly with TriMet.
Mayor Fitzgerald, Council President Ackerval, and Councilors Lehan, West, and Linville. For the record, my name is Miles Pengilly, State Government Affairs Manager for TriMet, and it sounds like I need to go to the robotics competition that they're holding to recruit some future engineers and mechanics.
Yes.
My address is listed on my card. TriMet has reviewed the legislative concept regarding the alignment of smart service territory with the city's boundaries that was up for consideration at today's pre-council work session. And TriMet supports the city's goal of coterminous boundaries, and we're happy to work with the city on an approach that is in the best interest of both parties. While TriMet is supportive of the general intent behind that legislative concept, we do question the need for new legislation to address this issue. As I think you're all aware, existing state statute already provides two paths for withdrawing from a transit district. One approach is under ORS 267.250 to 267.265, and that allows an area to petition TriMet's board to withdraw from TriMet's service district following a public hearing and a study to evaluate the impacts of the withdrawal. And I think it's worth pointing out that the decision of TriMet's board in response to the petition can be reviewed by a circuit court just to ensure that the decision is fair. The other approach is under ORS 267.207 sub 4, which allows an area to withdraw from TriMet service district via a district-wide vote by all the electors in TriMet service territory. In creating these statutes, TriMet believes that the Oregon legislature has already demonstrated clear intent regarding the process, considerations, and parameters that should accompany withdrawal from a transit district. Cities and other areas in the metro area, including Malala, Damascus, Sandy, Canby, Boring, and Wilsonville itself, have successfully used the petition process to withdraw areas from TriMet service territory since the statute was enacted. Wilsonville's most recent opportunity to undertake the petition process was from January 1st to August 30th, 2021, and to TriMet's knowledge, the city did not pursue the petition process during that window. TriMet does have concerns about the precedent that would be set by legislation that would circumvent the existing statutory process to address the needs of a specific area in TriMet service territory. If there are reasons that the city of Wilsonville does not believe that the existing statutory process meets its needs, TriMet is more than willing to collaborate with the city to develop a mutually agreeable solution that does not require new legislation. As a regional partner to both the city of Wilsonville and SMART, TriMet is committed to working with the city on its goal of making SMART's service coterminous with the Wilsonville city limits. So thank you for your consideration. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Miles. Really appreciate you coming to speak to the city and giving us this letter, and we will consider this and keep working on this effort. Thank you.
Great.
Can I ask a question?
Councilor Linville.
I just wanted to ask a question just to clarify the, the position that you're bringing to us, both in the letter and in your comments. I know that this is not the first time this has been an issue that has been discussed, and so I'm wondering why, if you think that the paths are currently there, why has TriMet not moved forward on vacating that area?
previously, so.
Sure. So I will say I have been at TriMet since August 1st, so I was not necessarily working closely on this issue for some of the previous legislative history that I am aware of. I think certainly TriMet would welcome Wilsonville initiating the petition process and would go through that petition process dutifully the way they have with some of the other cities I mentioned. But I think, you know, to my knowledge, Wilsonville hasn't initiated that process, and so I think under current statute, TriMet couldn't proactively initiate a petition process. It has to come from the area that would like to withdraw from TriMet service territory.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming to the council.
Fantastic question.
So that brings us to councilor comments, liaison reports, and meeting announcements, starting with Council President Akkerval.
Thank you. To report on, since our last council meeting, I did attend the Washington County Coordinating Committee meeting that was this last Monday on September 12th, where one of the items discussed was, in fact, some of the testimony that the mayor covered during mayor's business in regards to concerns over the regional pricing. Now the name is escaping me. The regional pricing
mobility. Oh, I know what you mean.
Plan. Thank you.
It's the RTMP. Right?
Thank you. Which is another acronym, and we're trying to avoid that. But yes. Okay. Coming up, I wanted to highlight a couple things that are happening in this city, run by the city, that we need to all pay attention to, I believe. September 24th is Bulky Waste Day, everyone's favorite day. From 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Oh,
details on it.
And Councilor Lehan will be providing some more details. I also wanted to highlight that on September 28th and October 4th at 6 p.m. at our Wilsonville Library, there will be a meeting for interested community members that may be looking to be a host family for the exchange delegation from Kitakata. And that's something that my family has done a number of times for the group of students coming from Kitakata, and it's really a wonderful experience to be a host, and it's really very easy thing to do. They're here for a short-term exchange. I believe it's usually around 10 days, and during most of the weekday they have programmed activities. So you drop your student off at City Hall generally in the morning and pick them up, you know, kind of end of business day, and then just introduce them to your normal life patterns in the evening and on the weekend. And that is the cool part that you get in an exchange program that you don't necessarily get when you just travel on your own. So if you're interested in doing that, again, September 28th, October 4th, at 6 p.m., either of those days, whichever one works best, at the Wilsonville Library, you can get more information. That is it for me tonight. Thanks.
Councilor Lehan.
Yes, I will pick up on that item that the council president was trying to steal from me.
Appetize.
But, but this is, and that is the announcement around, regarding our Bulky Waste Day, which is coming up this Saturday, the 24th, from 9 to 1 at Republic Services on Ritter Road. And it's always popular. That's where you can get rid of things like appliances and old computers and couches, mattresses, etc. What you can't get rid of there is construction debris or anything that might that would qualify as hazardous waste. That still has to go to Oregon City. But you can get rid of the things that are too big to park on your curb without embarrassing the neighborhood. So there is no charge, but they request a donation of small gift cards that will go to Wilsonville Community Sharing's food bank. So, that's a requested donation for the food bank. That's that. And then I had a concern and another announcement. And my concern is kind of a counselor concern that I didn't bring up before. But in this book, which is from LOC, very interesting article on the emerald ash borer, which is a bug. And but it is killing trees, and every community that it has hit, it kills 99% of all ash trees. It's a massive die-off, and it is in Forest Grove, so but has been around the country. What I'd like to ask is, could we get a report about this from our city
natural
arborist or naturalist or whoever is the appropriate person at a meeting in the future as to what our response is or how much we're monitoring where they are. I know there's a thing at my cemetery up on the hill, but that the Department of Ag has installed a bug catcher thing. But ash trees tend to be in creeks and wetlands. They don't tend to be up on the hill. So I don't know if we have, if we're monitoring places where we have ash trees to see if it's showing up.
We have a lot in Villebois.
And what our response is to it.
Thank you.
And then lastly, I will report that I was, Councillor Linville and I, did you report this last time? Attended Ruth Johnson's 100th birthday celebration. And did you read her little poem?
I did read her poem.
Oh, it was pretty good. Okay.
Socks?
Yeah, that she was so.
Read it out loud if you want to.
No, I'll read it out loud because we gave her a swag bag with things that included a Wilsonville hat and Wilsonville logo socks and such. Anyway, her poem that she wrote, and if any of you know Ruth, you know she's a character, was "Stars above, fire below, time will tell to which I go. When I'm laying in my last box, I will be wearing my Wilsonville socks."
Oh my gosh.
That is a showstopper. That's wonderful.
See, good. Hope you can write such good poetry at 100.
If only.
Good now.
Wonderful.
Sing a little song that she...
And she sings, yes.
Well, happy birthday to her. And thank you, Councillor West.
I am going to be super pithy, and so pithy that I have nothing to report this week. Okay. So, on to Councillor Linville.
Thank you. You're helping us stay on track.
I'm staying on track and on goal.
Councillor Linville.
I wish I could do that. But I'm an educator, and that's really hard. It's really hard. So I just wanted to reiterate that on the 14th of September, I attended the C4 Metro Subcommittee, and the points that the mayor made that were forwarded to the Oregon Transportation Commission, I reiterated at that meeting without much success, because there were some folks that wanted to keep it very narrow to the points that were in the letter that was being forwarded from the county, and I was disappointed that there were some of the members of C4 that really took our concerns to heart and actually supported them. But so what happened when it went to C4, I don't know.
And actually, I misspoke that, isn't it, to the C4 Metro Subcommittee?
Where the letter came from.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
I'm excited about Bulky Waste Day. I need to have a pickup truck, but which I don't have, so I may have to use 2 trips. And I will be attending the second Clackamas Workforce Partnership Board Retreat on the 30th of September, and I just wanted to draw attention to any of our folks that are listening to the packet that is online and the reports from our city departments. There is sometimes a perception that I have heard from some of our citizens that it doesn't seem like much is going on. And there are pages and pages and pages of projects that are being worked on by Public Works, by our community development folks, by, road projects, development, buildings. The project list is really impressive. And so I wanted to draw attention to that. And then lastly, I have had some concerns since we had our meeting with the ODOT staff at our last council meeting. And I think taking the lead from both the mayor and from Council President Ockervall about the importance of their own goal for meaningful community engagement. And that item being brought up again from our council, and when they were asked for what their strategies were for in making that meaningful engagement, particularly with Wilsonville, who is a community of concern for our tolling projects, their answer was, could you just tell us some of the groups and how we might engage them? And I have been very concerned about that since our last council meeting, because I think it is incumbent upon them to create those opportunities, to determine what's meaningful, and to establish those. So to attend a farmer's market periodically, or show up at a community meeting, or just informally, I don't think that represents meaningful community engagement. And I just wanted to publicly state my concern and disappointment in that discourse that we had with ODOT at our last meeting.
Thank you, Councilor Linville, for that attention to that important topic that we had in our letter and our testimony. And that brings us to the consent agenda. Will the city attorney please read the consent agenda?
Resolution number 2985, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville authorizing the city manager to execute a professional services agreement contract with Murray Smith Incorporated for owner's representative services for the Beckman Road Corridor Project, capital improvement project number 2102, 4205, 4206, 4212, and 7067. Resolution number 2996, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville authorizing the city manager to enter into a development agreement with BTC3 Grams Ferry IC LLC for construction of oversized public water infrastructure improvements. Resolution number 3000, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville authorizing the city manager to execute a professional services agreement contract amendment with Murray Smith Incorporated to provide final design and construction support services for the Charbonneau Lift Station Rehabilitation Project, capital improvement project number 2106. Minutes of the September 8th, 2022 City Council meeting.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
I move to adopt the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. That brings us to new business regarding resolution number 2986, which is going to be presented by staff. Has been patiently waiting. Thank you.
Mayor and councilors, thank you very much. I'm Andrew Barrett. I'm a capital project engineer manager. You have to give me 1 second to pull up the presentation here.
Mayor, I'm getting some instruction that we need the Assistant City Attorney to read the title here, so.
Oh, please read will the Assistant City Attorney please read the title?
No, I got it, sorry.
Resolution number 2986, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville authorizing acquisition of property and property interests related to construction of the Willamette Water Supply Program right-of-way enhancement projects.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So the right-of-way enhancement projects is in relation to the Willamette Water Supply Program. I'm going to go through some background information just for those who might be paying attention who are unfamiliar with the project. This particular section for the Willamette Water Supply Program and the associated enhancement is Wilsonville Road to Garden Road. It's called PLM 1.3. There's going to be council action required for some truck turning movements, sidewalk improvements, and lighting. And if you look on the screen, there are sections shown in red on the two images on the left. The other components of this pipeline essentially have already been completed. This will be the last section that is going to get constructed. The impacted properties are shown here, and I apologize that this is kind of small, but this stuff is shown in the council packet. I included this particular map to show where all the properties were relative to each other. It's various properties across the city. We do have a chart shown in the council packet and up here that shows that there are it's not the entire property, it's small sections of these properties for the truck turning movements, the ADA improvements, and for other associated improvements that were outlined in the previous documents shown in the ground lease agreements. I'm going to go to the next slide. I went ahead and grabbed a sample acquisition just to give a general representation of what the right-of-way or easement acquisition would entail. This is a slightly smaller one than a few of the others, where we're just taking the corner of this particular property for the ADA improvements to bring the ADA ramp up to current federal guidelines. So some points of interest for this project, which is associated with the Willamette Water Supply improvements. It's a 2-year project. The cost for the right-of-way acquisition and the improvements are going to be paid for by the Willamette Water Supply Program. Let's see here. The improvements, again, are there's some streetlight infill. There's a city-owned fiber optic cable extension. There's ADA, or American with Disabilities Act, ramp improvements, and to substandard ramps, and to driveways that will be impacted by this project. So I know it went kind of quick. I know you guys have had a busy night tonight, but I'd like to open up the floor to questions for questions.
Councilor Linville.
In the staff notes, the statement is that a robust and inclusive public outreach process for the construction of the pipeline and enhancement projects, including regular stakeholder and interested city meetings and so on, has what is the notification process for the property owners that will be involved in this, or has that already taken place?
That has not taken place yet. We will be reaching out to the property owners. The Willamette Supply folks themselves have a very extensive program that has reached out to many of the owners. We've actually worked with some of their consultants on other projects, and through outreach programs that we've acquired more contacts. So we are going to ensure that we will work with the property owners so they're not surprised by these actions. So
is it the process, the normal process that we would approve the resolution before that discussion would happen with the property owners?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Lehan.
Yeah, can you put the map back on?
Sure.
Or maps, I don't know what it is. Do you have a map of Kinsman and Wilsonville Road? Or am I looking at the wrong?
So I've got a larger section of that down here, yes. Unfortunately, it's a rather small map. I apologize.
Can you maximize your screen?
Yep.
Might help a little bit.
Oh, that's a little better.
How's that? And that particular property, there's the Fred Meyer Fuel Centers right there. There is going to be a right turn movement for trucks, and that is going to be the most impacted property. So.
Okay, now I can go.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm looking on, I don't know if this is, what am I looking
It's
at?
the last page in our packet.
Exhibit A, item 14. Am I ahead of myself, behind myself? I don't know. Page, let's see, 166 of 314? Or no?
Or 196?
167 of 314.
I don't know how to jump that quickly.
Which is the intersection of Kinsman and Wilsonville Road. Is that for this item or a different item?
That's part of this. You're saying Exhibit A. Oh, I wonder if that's in there twice.
That's the one you're on.
Page 167 was a good.
167. Exhibit B.
Yeah, Exhibit B. What's with that pipe? Do we know about that pipe?
Pulling that up quickly.
Say again.
I'm worried about that pipe. Is that pipe already installed?
There it is.
Yeah, that pipe.
That pipe is not installed. That particular section is going to be a, let me just double check here, right? Yep, Wilsonville Road, yep. That section of pipe is going to be 19 feet down to the top of pipe. It's going to be installed with trenchless methods where they will have to dig at the corner that is shown, the first corner that is shown to be able to, you want to go up a little more, right there. Yep.
You say it's 19 feet underground.
19 feet underground. And that was specifically done to ensure that the oak tree that is in that location is going to be protected, so.
Okay. Well, because that's the main concern. Obviously, why I asked if it was, if they, I know that Morgan Holland has been looking at it because it's clearly distressed right now.
Yep, and we actually have asked the Willamette Water Supply staff to take a look at that tree to ensure that we are not going to further impact the tree. There's a report that is in process with the follow-up tree climb. We're going to try to do what we can.
Yeah, she was suggesting we need a tree climb up there to assess
that. Has happened one time already. There is another tree climb that was scheduled, I believe, for last week, but the findings for that essentially have not come to the city yet. So we're aware of the issue, and we are concerned about that oak tree.
Yeah. Yeah, because, well, I mean, we've put a lot of money into that oak tree already.
Yeah.
To build that sidewalk up over that buttress route. And, you know, so, and Progress has done a lot to take care of it over the years. So, so that's a scary line when I'm looking at that line going right under the trunk. But, maybe 19 feet is low enough to not impact it. It looks like it's directly under the trunk.
So the report that I saw did, and it was from Morgan, the one that I saw did mention that the depth should be deep enough to avoid impacting the tree. we did ask her to take a look, at the tree, and the Willamette folks to take a look at the tree, because, we are concerned about, ensuring that we don't impact the tree, because we have noticed that it is in distress right now.
Yes, and it's not just physically impacting the root system or whatever, it's disturbing the water regime.
Yep.
Inadvertently disturbing the water regime by altering things underground.
Sure.
So a bunch of things. I'm not an arborist, but I count on Morgan to advise us on this.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up, and maybe when you get that report, you could
We'll share it with
share it. Yeah. That'd be great.
Yeah, I'd like to see what Morgan has to say, or after the next tree climb, or whatever report since the last.
I do have a question on the public outreach effort, again, as Councillor Linfield brought up. So they are implementing it. I bring up this big construction project periodically with people. It just became something I do once in a while to see, because we've been talked about it. We've had news articles about it for years. We talk about it at the council, but because maybe it's such a big project and it's been going on for so long, it's not easy to keep it in people's awareness for some reason, even though a lot of effort has been made. And we've had articles in the Boones Ferry Messenger, articles in the Wilsonville Spokesman. So maybe could you describe, you talked about what the property owners would know. What about people who live and work, drive and walk and bike around Wilsonville?
I will ensure that we've got a website set up for the particular project. I know that I've worked with some of the Willamette public outreach staff directly to make sure that they are coordinating with folks, and we can ensure that we've got effort, in place to make sure that we are informing the public that this project is coming. So.
We can have the Willamette Water Supply folks either send us information on what their outreach efforts are. I know that they've gone above and beyond.
Oh, I know they've done a lot.
But I think what I hear you saying is it'd be nice to know how they're going to manage this part of the project in terms of outreach. We can get
and that I think that would be good, because I definitely applaud the city and Willamette Water Supply. Lots has been done, but it's not visible, so it's not necessarily something that people talk about or remember. So I think giving that to the council would be good, and we could help out. I'm not seeing any other comments at this time.
Your Honor, can I move?
Yeah.
Okay. I move to adopt resolution at number 2986.
Is there a second?
I'll second. I'll second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And that brings us to continuing business. Will the city attorney please read the ordinances?
No, just the titles, yeah.
Ordinance number 866, an ordinance of the City of Wilsonville annexing approximately 11.17 acres of property located south of Southwest Frog Pond Lane at 7480 and 7500 Southwest Frog Pond Lane for development of a 19-lot residential subdivision. Ordinance number 867, an ordinance of the City of Wilsonville approving a zone map amendment from the Clackamas County Rural Residential Farm Forest 5-acre zone to the residential neighborhood zone on approximately 10.94 acres located south of Southwest Frog Pond Lane at 7480 and 7500 Southwest Frog Pond Lane for development of a 19-lot residential subdivision.
Thank you. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, and tonight we will consider on second reading ordinance number 866 and 867. Are we going to have a staff report?
Cindy Luxhoy, Associate Planner. No, Your Honor, not tonight. I'd also like to say that we have not received any additional information or public comment about this project since the September 8th first reading.
Thank you. Public testimony was accepted during the public hearing, which was closed after the first reading. I ask again, do any members of the City Council wish to abstain, declare a conflict of interest, or report any ex parte contact or any information gained outside of the hearing?
No.
No. At this time, does staff have, I think you've already answered this, but I'm going to ask again, do you have any follow-up information to present, or do any members of the City Council have questions for staff? May I have a motion to approve ordinance number 866 on second reading?
I move to approve ordinance number 866 on second reading.
Is there a second?
Adopt. Let's adopt.
I'll second.
She meant adopt.
I did.
We have a motion to adopt ordinance number 866 on second reading. Is there any discussion? Will the city recorder please call the roll for the vote?
Councilor Linville?
Yes.
Councilor West?
Yes.
Council President Aukervall?
Yes.
Councilor Lehan?
Yes.
Mayor Fitzgerald?
Yes. The motion passes 5-0. The motion is, motion number 866 is approved on second reading.
Your Honor, I move to adopt ordinance.
Excuse me. Oh.
What? We're not going
to the
right
next
on.
one?
Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to say one more thing.
Oh, one more thing.
If you desire to appeal this decision
Important, thank you.
to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals, you must file a notice of intent to appeal stating the grounds of the appeal in the form and within the time prescribed by state law. May I have a motion to adopt ordinance number 867?
Your Honor, I move to adopt ordinance number 867 on second reading.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
The motion has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I hereby ask the city recorder to make a roll call vote. As many are in favor of the enactment of the ordinance will, as their names are called, answer aye. I didn't say this before, but let's try it this way. We've had enough of yes.
Are they synonyms?
Those opposed will answer no. Those who wish to abstain from the vote will answer abstain. The city recorder will now call the roll.
Aye. Councilor West?
Aye.
Council President Aukervall?
Aye.
Councilor Lehan?
Aye.
Mayor Fitzgerald?
Aye. The motion passes 5-0. If you desire to appeal this decision to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals, you must file a notice of intent to appeal stating the grounds of the appeal in the form and within the time prescribed by state law. Thank you. We'll now go to a public hearing for ordinance number 868 on first reading. And will the city attorney please read the ordinance by title?
Ordinance number 868, an ordinance of the City of Wilsonville annexing approximately 4.92 acres of property located north of Southwest Frog Pond Lane at 7315 Southwest Frog Pond Lane for development of a 12-lot residential subdivision. Ordinance number 869, an ordinance of the City of Wilsonville approving a zone map amendment from the Clackamas County Rural Residential Farm Forest 5-acre zone to the residential neighborhood zone on approximately 4.07 acres located south of Southwest Frog Pond Lane at 7314 Southwest Frog Pond Lane for development of a 12-lot residential subdivision.
Thank you for reading the ordinance by title for ordinance number 868 and 869. And this will be a public hearing, quasi-judicial on first reading. And if you would, let's see, we have this on the screen during the hearing. If, I don't think that's showing the full amount, the full text there. But basically, if you want to provide testimony remotely during this meeting, please use the raise hand feature of Zoom or press *9 on your telephone, or notify the city recorder if you wish to speak when the time for testimony is called. If you're having difficulties with these instructions, you may call 1-669-900-6833, and when prompted, enter webinar ID number 815-3605-6468. Both numbers are now shown on the screen. And when called to testify, state your full name and address for the record. I request from those providing testimony not to repeat any testimony that has already been given to the City Council, simply indicating that you agree with the prior testimony given by a speaker you identify as sufficient. We'll hear the staff report.
Good evening, Mayor Fitzgerald and councilors. My name is Georgia McAllister. I'm Associate Planner with the city, and I'm here tonight to present to you for your review Ordinance number 868 and 869, which are an annexation and zone map amendment for the Frog Pond Overlook 12-lot subdivision. As required by statute, I would announce that the applicable review criteria for ordinance number 868 are included on page 2 of the annexation findings in Exhibit C of Attachment 1 of the Council Staff Report. Review criteria for ordinance 869 are on page 2 of the zone map amendment findings in Exhibit B of Attachment 2 of the Council Staff Report. The subject property is located in Frog Pond West, north of the southwest Frog Pond Lane. There's one property included in the annexation and zone map amendment request for the Frog Pond Overlook subdivision. It's outlined in red on the slide. The annexation also includes a portion of southwest Frog Pond Lane right-of-way. The proposal for a 12-lot subdivision on the Frog Pond Overlook property is in line with the Frog Pond West master plan that City Council previously approved, which went through a robust public process. City Council is reviewing the annexation and zone map amendment actions for the subdivision site. The area proposed for annexation includes one tax lot, 0700, and a portion of southwest Frog Pond Lane right-of-way, together comprising roughly 4.92 acres. The annexation area is indicated by the gray area on the map on this slide. The property is contiguous to land currently in the city within the UGB boundary and master plan for residential development. All property have consented to in writing to the annexation, and there are no electors residing in the site. As a result, council is able to move forward with annexing the property. The proposed zone map amendment is to rezone tax lot 0700, comprising of approximately 4.07 acres from Clackamas County Rural Residential Farm Forest 5 acre to the city residential neighborhood zone. The rezone is consistent with the comprehensive plan map designation of residential neighborhood, as well as with the Frog Pond West master plan. On September 12th, 2022, Development Review Board Panel A recommended to City Council approval of the proposed annexation and zone map amendment. At the September 12th meeting, the DRB also approved, with conditions, a Stage 1 preliminary plan, Stage 2 final plan, site design review of parks and open space, tentative subdivision plat, Type C tree removal plan, and abbreviated SROZ map verification for the Frog Pond Overlook subdivision. Approval of these requests is contingent on City Council approval of the annexation and zone map amendment before you tonight. Based on the information presented, staff recommends approval of the annexation and zone map amendment requests. This concludes tonight's presentation by staff. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
So I'm going to ask the city attorney a question. I've done this a number of times, but just because of the order of how that public hearing phone number came up and everything, I want to, she's asking us for questions, but I want to officially call the public hearing to order. Because I didn't get to say that yet, so I'm going to do that.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. I call to order the public hearing regarding proposed ordinance number 868 and 869 on first reading. Do any members of the City Council wish to abstain, declare a conflict of interest, or report any ex parte contact or any information gained outside of the hearing?
No.
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 Have all members familiarized themselves with the application?
Yes.
Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the participation of any member of the City Council? For all those wishing to testify, please be aware that failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the City Council and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals, LUBA, based on that issue. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward the criteria that staff will describe or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation which you believe apply to the decision. City Council meetings are open to the public. This meeting may also be attended remotely in accordance with Oregon law. Information on how the public can attend this meeting remotely and give testimony is posted at City Hall and on the city's website. Notice was given that testimony could be submitted for the record in advance in writing by emailing or mailing it to the city recorder. Testimony may be submitted in writing at any time prior to the closure of the public hearing. Once the public hearing is closed, no further testimony in any form will be accepted. As I stated earlier, the numbers to call and testify remotely are on the screen as you see, before us. When called upon to testify, state your full name and address for the record. I request from those providing testimony not to repeat testimony that has already been given to the City Council. Simply indicating you agree with the prior testimony given by a speaker you identify as sufficient. We've heard the staff presentation. Council, do you have any questions of staff?
Yes, I do.
Councilor Lehan.
This is maybe a question for city manager, but when we talk about site design review, what is involved in that? I know you had mentioned we do a tree survey and et cetera, et cetera. I presume that means that includes a building survey.
Yeah, we would look to see what was on site prior to it as well. And yeah, inventory, I think they also look at the
part of the inventory photographs.
Yes, that's now our standing practice.
Okay, because those buildings are going down now. They're gone. I mean, that house is gone, another house is gone. Do we have pictures?
The building department
is taking those pictures.
Yes, but I will confirm that tomorrow too.
And
I know that's come up in the past, so we did make some changes downstairs to make sure that we're taking pictures of.
Yeah. I mean, people don't just go out and tear down a house without getting a permit of some sort, I presume.
They have to get a demo permit, and part of the process is to take pictures before it's demoed.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that was indeed happening as they disappear.
Any other questions from council? Any comments from the city attorney?
No comments from the city attorney.
Does the applicant have an additional presentation?
The applicant does not have a presentation tonight.
I'm not seeing any questions from the audience. Are we hearing any? No more clarifying questions. If no further testimony, hearing no further questions and everyone having testified, I hereby declare this public hearing closed at 8:19 p.m. on September 19th. Does the city council, haven't seen this before, I have a comment asking if the city council wants to continue the hearing. We don't need to do that.
Why would we?
We don't.
How many comments?
That would only be if there were significant issues or concerns raised, Mayor.
Right. The record, forgive me because I have a new form here.
I know.
The record will be left open for 7 days.
If there are issues or if there's a need to continue, which there is, based on the lack of testimony, there is not.
Then I'm going to say,
This is where I say, Your Honor.
it is now time for the council to consider ordinance number 868 on first reading. Do I have a motion?
Excuse me, does the public hearing have to be closed?
I just did.
Oh, you did.
I'm going to say that again. The public hearing is now closed.
You did.
May I have a motion?
Your Honor, I move to adopt ordinance number 868 on first reading.
Second.
Motion has been moved and seconded. I will call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
You could ask for discussion, but.
Is there any further discussion? This time I thought, let's ask for more discussion. Really, I mean, I will add something on discussion. This is the 10th development of Frog Pond West. Does anyone have any other comments?
That's it.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. May I have a motion to adopt ordinance number 869?
Your Honor, I move to adopt ordinance number 869 on first reading.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion to adopt ordinance number 869 on first reading has been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Or excuse me, is there any discussion?
No.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. I do appreciate those notes. It's just that there are many options. It's like a multiple choice test with 16
Choose your own adventure
options.
book.
Yeah.
And we get a new form all the time.
So that brings us to city manager's business, and I do want, before you start, I do want to say to Councillor Linville's point, in our council packet, this is the time when we have the monthly report for August, and it's really great, really, really robust from every one of the departments, and I know you do this every month, but it really is, we can't have another long meeting to go through all of it, but it's the work of our work, the description of all the work. Thank you.
The departments do a great job.
They do. Any city manager report?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
It's all in writing.
It's all in writing.
It's like 30 pages. Okay. Is there any legal business?
You're way ahead of schedule, Your Honor. I don't have any legal business.
Thank you. City council meeting is now adjourned at 8:23 p.m.
Way to get us through it. Good job.
I appreciate all. Oh, yeah.
Look at that. You
We
literally.
got urban renewal.
I bet you it's fast though.
Okay.
Oh, he's quick.
I do appreciate the help with when I say the wrong words and so forth. Okay. We got to do it again?
Or.
I was wrong. We're still live.
You don't have to apologize to me. I don't want to make it look like I'm trying to hurt someone.
You want the lights to go out again,
And yeah, just for the record, this is done to signal to the AV department. I don't personally like waving the gavel around. I do it by request.
Here we go.
There he goes.
Excellent.
I call to order a meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency of the City of Wilsonville, September 19th, 2022 at 8:24 p.m. Will the agency recorder please call the roll?
Member Linville?
Here.
Member West?
Here.
Member Aukervall?
Here.
Member Lehan?
Here.
Chair Fitzgerald?
Here. May I have a motion to approve the following order of agenda for one of the members?
Your Honor, I move to approve the following order of agenda.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sorry.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Will the agency attorney please read the consent agenda?
You have to ask for citizen input.
Oh, excuse me, God. Okay. Thank you. I was just looking to involve you there. Now, we're now ready for the citizens' input section of the agenda. This is an opportunity for visitors to address the Urban Renewal Agency on items not on the agenda. It's also time to address items that are on the agenda but are not scheduled for a public hearing. Staff and the Urban Renewal Agency will make every effort to respond to questions raised during citizens' input before tonight's meeting ends or as quickly as possible thereafter. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. You can use the raise hand feature of Zoom to let us know if you'd like to provide comments. And I'm not seeing any citizens wanting to give input, so we'll go to ask the agency attorney to read the consent agenda.
URA resolution number 329, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville Urban Renewal Agency authorizing the city manager to execute a professional services agreement contract amendment with Murray Smith Incorporated for owner's representative services for the Beckman Road Corridor Project, capital improvement project number 2102, 4205, 4206, 4212, and 7067. Minutes of the August 1st, 2022 Urban Renewal Agency meeting.
Thank you. The consent agenda has been read. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Second. Motion's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes 5-0. The Urban Renewal Agency is adjourned.
2 minutes.